We live? Yeah, we're live. What week is it? Welcome back to the SNS podcast. And actually, guys, hang on a second.
I guess it's week 5, right?
Yeah, I think it's technically week 5. We got a little technical difficulties here, but yeah, it's week 5. This pod's gonna be a little late into the week, as most of these I think are going to be, just simply because logistically it's tough for us to all get together and do these. If I was like, for example, it's Friday night. We're watching currently Miami played Duke. We're about to watch USC at Washington State, which will be an interesting game. We'll get into
one of the bigger ones of the week.
Get into our recap for that. I mean, when you guys see this video, likely, I don't know, it'll probably be up, but probably for you guys that watch the video, that game might have already happened. In the future, once our viewership builds, I think we'll try to make sure the videos are up, a little bit earlier in the week, so you guys can actually see our bets, our recaps of the games, our preview of the games coming up, and more specifically, or I think more importantly, the bets, because we've done really well this year so far. And we had, as a pod altogether, a little bit rougher week last week, but I think we still were winning, actually. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think we were close to it. So
yeah,
we're doing well, and we'll recap that. But let's just get right into it. So last week, a couple decent games. That slate was, I think on paper, kind of bad, but it ended up being pretty good with a couple interesting games, some teams that kind of rose to the occasion. I guess we can start with Penn State, Iowa, since that was really exciting finish, and Iowa almost did what they do.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that was, honestly, I think so far in the season, that was the most entertaining game I've seen. Even though it was, kind of an ugly game, I can get into games like that. It was definitely exciting.
Yeah.
Iowa just has some black magic at home when they play a top 5 team. It's crazy. And, on you just look at the box score, it looks like they got dominated. Penn State outgained them by about 300 yards, I think. But Iowa, what they're able to do is they give up yards, but then Penn State would get in the red zone and they get held to field goals, or they go for it on 4th down and get stopped.
Yeah.
Iowa played really good bend, don't break defense until the very last play of the game.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of their formula in those games. They just hang around, and then they catch you with 1 or 2 plays, and all of a sudden they're in the lead, and then just try to finish the game off. And
is Ferentz a good coach?
I don't know. I don't know. He's just an average coach.
I don't think he is, but somehow he, like you said, his teams get up for these kinds of games. So
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, they. Iowa had that game, and give credit to Penn State. I mean, that's what great teams do, is they find ways to win games when they haven't maybe been playing their best. And actually, if you look at the box score of that game, Penn State outgained them by a bunch. And we talked about the bend, don't break defense of Iowa, and they executed that to a T, and they kind of knew that, if they tried to gamble a whole lot with Penn State or tried to play at their pace, then they would probably get blown out. But they executed their plan. They just didn't stop Penn State in the last play of the game. And I think that's the thing where we talked about last week in the pod, that, don't just be like a box score guy, or like a guy that looked at the scoreboard, on your app or whatever sports app you use, and you're like, oh, Penn State only, beat Iowa 15-13 on the last play, or whatever the score was. Penn State, was in control. They just weren't finishing drives, like we said. They got turnovers, and that kind of shit will kill you. So I think it was a good first road test for Penn State, and it's really important for them to get something like that in before they play Ohio State on October 28th. I think that's Penn State. Well, they do play Michigan the week before that, too.
Yeah, Michigan at home.
So I would expect them to win that game. I haven't obviously looked at that matchup because it's still 2 or 3 weeks away, but it's going to be important for them to get some tests in, because, I think, even though we're Ohio State fans and they looked like absolute shit against Oklahoma, but they've played some shitty teams the last few weeks. They've got some more shitty teams coming up. That's not a team that you want to come into their house when they have confidence and they have kind of like a chip on their shoulder. We saw that in 2014. Teams or analysts and everybody wrote them off. They said these guys suck. They're overrated. The Big Ten sucks. And they stepped up. And now, granted, they had a bunch of NFL athletes on that roster, but this roster does too. It's just a matter of putting it all together. And, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself with that game. But the point is, Penn State, congrats to them. They grinded it out. It was a gutsy win, I should say. Georgia, Mississippi State, there's not a whole lot to talk about. I think people were kind of curious about Mississippi State after what they did to LSU. And I think people were curious about Georgia after they beat Notre Dame, and then we were kind of wondering, I think that game's kind of a pivot game for those two teams in the season. Like, whoever wins that game, we feel like that team they might be for real and have a chance to make some noise in their division in the SEC. But, it was Georgia from the get-go.
Yeah.
Do you have the stats, or do you have any comments?
Yeah, I was just looking at them. Georgia, they hit a big play early on, long pass play, take the early lead, and they had a ton of momentum. They just never looked back from there, and they just pretty much dominated.
Yeah.
They were extremely efficient passing the ball. Fromm only threw 12 times, completed 9 of them, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And on the ground, they got production out of a lot of guys for 203 total yards rushing. They completely shut down Mississippi State offensively. So,
let's be honest about this. Do we really think that Georgia's just going to be able to run and not have to pass like that against Bama in the SEC championship game?
They're still pretty far behind Bama, in my opinion. Obviously, they look like the clear best team in the East.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Florida's not good. They played Vandy this week, and it's the first time in like 30 years that game opened under 10 points in the swamp. So Florida's not good right now. They have a major issue at quarterback, which they've had ever since Urban Meyer left. They're in a little bit of trouble. But, yeah, I think Georgia's definitely the best team in the East. Addison called that before the year started. But we all on the podcast said that no matter what Georgia does, they have to beat Bama in the SEC title game to make it worthwhile. And right now, in my opinion, I don't know about you, I think Bama's double digits better than them. I think they're probably
Georgia.
I think they're probably a good 10 to 13 points or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but it's a bad matchup. I think that Fromm would be forced to do something, and I don't think he's ready for that yet.
Yeah, so I would agree.
The last game I think we're going to recap from last week was Florida State, NC State. This was an interesting game because Florida State hadn't played since they played Alabama because of Hurricane Irma, and they lost Francois, their quarterback, in that game. And so we didn't really know what to expect out of them maybe offensively going into this game, especially against an NC State team that I guess unanimously this year is thought of as like having a really talented defense, and their offense is supposed to be like decent, I think. So that was a game that on the podcast, I actually, a few of us had them, I think, had NC State plus 11 or 12. I think I even mentioned on the podcast if I was going to pick an upset, it probably would be NC State, and they did actually pull that off. What did you think about that game? Do you think, is Florida State, they're pretty much like out of the national picture, I think, but did you see a team that still is capable of maybe like winning 10 games and running the rest of their table, or do you think maybe like their spirits just crushed, like they had hopes for the playoff for sure this year, like thought of as a national title contender, and now, they lost at home to NC State, and then they still have to play Clemson, who looks like possibly one of the 2 best teams in the country.
Yeah. Going forward for Florida State, I think, I've thought they are definitely one of the most talented teams in the country if they can just, get it figured out. They're 0-2. They've played 2 good teams.
Yeah.
They have the talent to beat Clemson, so
yeah,
I could see them running the table.
Mm-hmm.
I think they should be Ohio State fans' best friend going through the rest of the season, because if they can run the table, they could take the ACC out of the playoff. That would be huge for Ohio State.
teams.
Or any other team that lost early is
Oklahoma
trying to
State,
get in. Yeah,
maybe like if USC loses tonight and the Pac-12 beats itself up, like that's a good point. Like I think a lot of you guys that are like, oh, make fun of Florida State, they're 0-2. A lot of you guys like us, you should be rooting for them the rest of the year to win that game against Clemson to make some noise. What do you think of NC State? Do you think that's a team that could win this conference? Maybe.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Now, they're definitely a player now because maybe you see like a three-way tie scenario like later on in this conference. That would be interesting. Yeah, we got to see who they've got home and away. And
I'm kind of curious about the rest of their schedule for sure.
But yeah, I was really impressed because I expected Florida State to, bounce back.
They were picked 4th in Phil Steele's magazine.
Behind Louisville
in that division. So they've got Syracuse, then they've got Louisville on Thursday night at home, and that's going to be an interesting game. Then they're at Pitt. Bye week, then at Notre Dame, then Clemson.
So I totally forgot they play Notre Dame. That's
big. They've got some big games coming up to where they can really. If they get through the schedule, they've earned it.
But, and they got their big road hurdle out of the way. They host Louisville and Clemson.
Right.
As far as ACC games go, they're at Notre Dame. That won't matter if they're trying to get into the ACC championship. But they do already have one loss to a team that's not good. So that would hurt them if they were
it would, yeah,
in a scenario where they're trying to get in the playoff at the end of the year.
It's probably good for them that their biggest road game remaining is at Notre Dame. And sorry, Steele, but I think you would agree with me. Notre Dame's not a tough place to play, to be honest. I don't think it's the toughest of atmospheres to deal with. So,
if Notre Dame is too dependent on the run, that will play right in NC State.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. It's just I don't think on paper right now it's the best matchup for Notre Dame. So NC State, that's an interesting team to keep an eye on. A team that at the end of the year we might say, holy shit, this team made the playoffs somehow. So it'll be interesting, and they do get Clemson at home for their homecoming game. So that's definitely one to look forward to. But let's get back on schedule here. So. Let's actually recap the bets from last week.
Yeah.
Do you have? I guess we probably should have prepared this beforehand, but
we got the doc right here.
We got the doc. We got the overall record, maybe, or
yeah, we got records. Okay. So we keep a Google Doc of everyone's games this year. We've been doing it since week 2.
And if this is your first time watching this podcast, there's 4 of us. Corey from Denver, Steele, who just literally had his first child born this morning, so congratulations to him.
Congratulations to Steele. Good luck.
Yes, good luck being a father. And Addison and myself. So there's 4 of us in the podcast that make these bets. So continue with
all right.
Your spiel or whatever.
Yeah. So week 4. Well, on the season, I'll give the season records here. Corey is 19-13. Steele's 10-10, but he was soon to be father. His mind probably wasn't in the right place.
Research was not existent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's understandable.
Yeah.
I am 15-9 on the year, and Nick is 19-7. So no losers. We're doing pretty good as a group.
We're doing
really good as a group.
Say that. We're doing amazing.
Last week, Nick had the best week of anyone on the year at 10-3.
10-3, baby. Who blew it for me? I don't even remember.
Oh, Toledo up and down.
Who was up. Wake, who is
USC gave it up late too.
USC got backdoored late. They should have probably never been in a position to cover anyway because they were blowing it against Cal. They were playing poorly. Darnold was turning the ball over a lot, and we'll get into that game with Washington State that's coming up soon. But Wake Forest, first of all, I picked Virginia Tech for my lock of the week, and I said on the podcast that I was predicting a bold 40-point victory. They won 38-0, so close enough. But Wake Forest, holy shit! I almost picked. If you guys are there Wake Forest fans, I don't even know if they exist.
I didn't know where they played.
App State. They played at Appalachian State, and
did they lose?
No, they won 2019 in the last seconds of the game, I think, or something like that. What is this? A defensive touchdown?
No.
Miami's just schooling Duke now. Yeah. Miami, a team that's quietly going to be 3-0.
Yeah, because it seems like they've barely even played this year.
Yeah, they haven't. It's because of the hurricane or whatever. Anyway, Wake Forest, screw you. I almost picked you to be my lock of the week because I looked at some metrics for once, which I usually don't do, and I really liked you guys against App State. And then you just had to come out and like barely win that game. You didn't deserve to win it, probably. So screw you guys. You almost blew it for me, but yeah, you got it. And the computer goes to sleep sometimes. Don't worry about that. What? What?
Was it like in the corner?
I don't know. That's weird. We'll see if it does it again. Anyway, I mean, it would be running anyway. It's not gonna turn off. So, but yeah. So, I mean, as a group, we're killing it overall. Last week, I think as a group, we weren't quite as good, but we're still in position to have a really good year. So, did you hit your lock of the week, or did you have one, or do we need to recap that?
Well, we'll just recap my shitty week.
Okay.
2-6. Finally had a losing week on the season. Those happen.
Mhm.
Can't win them all. Still 15-9 on the season, so I was killing it before. Came back down to earth a little bit. Now it's a new week.
That'll be me. So this week.
Yeah, some of these games I was upset about how they played out. Like, I did say Florida would. I said I wouldn't believe that Florida could possibly lose to Kentucky. They didn't lose, but
they didn't cover.
But they won by 1.
Right.
They were in a situation at the end of the game where they were down by 6. Worst case scenario for me. They score. I was rooting for them to miss the extra point and go to OT, but then they hit it, win by 1, and I lose. Maryland lost their quarterback on the first series of the game, and they were pretty much fucked. And I could tell early on.
Unlucky.
I could tell early on that they were not looking good in that game. They had no offense after that.
Yeah.
They were on their third string quarterback because they've lost their top 2 guys now.
They're fucked forever now. Like Ohio State's when they play Ohio State, we're gonna beat them by like 40 points.
Yeah, Maryland sucks again.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah.
I was enjoying the Turtles early in the season, so it's kind of a shame.
I mean, Texas has looked pretty good the last couple weeks. I mean, defensively better than what they did against Maryland, and Maryland took it to that team, and Maryland had been looking pretty good to start the year, but that's the thing in college football. You guys, when we talk about injuries, that's why the schools like Bama and OSU and Clemson, they can survive injuries because they have incredible depth. But a school like Maryland, who maybe their best player was their quarterback, Maryland loses one of their top 3 players or something, that could fuck their whole season. So, they're screwed. But anyway.
Yeah, Mississippi State was my worst bet of the season, I think. I took them, and they got smoked. I'll give myself credit on a couple. I took Baylor, as I think a few of us did.
I think 3 of us in the pod had Baylor plus 28 against Oklahoma, and Baylor had a chance to win that game straight up at the end. So credit to them.
And, the one UCLA Stanford was the best bet. You and I both had it.
Yeah, easy bet.
Over 62
that was so
on this
lockish.
one.
Like, that should have been the lock for everybody.
Stanford had 58 points by themselves.
I bet it twice. I said
last week that Stanford is going to run all over UCLA because their defense is just atrocious.
That's possibly the worst Power 5 defense I've ever seen from like a school that's supposed to be like relevant.
And it has athletes. I mean, LA.
I don't know.
They should.
Right, you tell me. They're terrible.
So Stanford runs for like 400 yards on them. I said Rosen would get his points. He did. He gets his 30 plus. So
he can start for the Browns right now. So.
That was a super easy cover. Steele at 3-7. See if there's anything interesting.
Maybe just give like his best one and his worst one. Just call everybody out for the best one.
Best was Notre Dame -3, and he had been saying all preseason, he would take Notre Dame against Sparty, minus whatever.
I had Notre Dame as well.
They crushed, and we'll give him credit for that. Let's see, what's his worst one here? Some of these I don't know. What is O-Tech? That's Texas Tech. So he had the over there.
Yeah, I don't know.
On his over-unders, he does not say over or under.
Wait, it just says...
It's for over.
Yeah, O's for over. Yeah. Okay, I was like, wait a minute, what's O? Okay, that makes sense. All right. Well, whatever. Go to Corey's then. We don't care.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's see who Corey's best bet was. And then I already said my best bet was Virginia Tech. I think that was actually probably Corey's as well. And maybe the Baylor game. Corey and I don't know if you had him. Corey and I got really lucky with West Virginia versus Kansas. We backdoored the shit out of that. West Virginia was only up like 7 with like 5 minutes and 20 seconds left. Actually, that game I didn't even look at that game until like hours later in the day after it ended because I thought that West Virginia wasn't even going to have a chance of covering. But there's a couple lucky series of events that happened. I'm sure it got featured on Bad Beats, Scott Van Pelt's show on ESPN or whatever. But West Virginia ended up covering somehow. So we got lucky in that one, but we hit that one. I think him and I agreed that Virginia Tech was our kind of like lockish bet of the week, and they hammered Old Dominion 38-0. So good bets by us, I guess. But let's get into.
I gotta.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Corey's worst, I think, maybe is Penn State.
Yeah.
-12.
Yeah, that was a bad one.
Just because I like to always say. Like,
we both said we would have taken Iowa if we would have bet it. So I mean,
and I always like to half jokingly sometimes say, Iowa's a tough place to play, but
it is a tough place to play. There's no joke.
I think that is it is an underrated place to play in terms of difficulty. Corey, he's always going to say, but it's Iowa. Look at the athletes they have compared to Penn State. Yeah, it's no comparison, but I'm just like, I don't understand it. It's just a tough place to play. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it smells bad there.
Apparently, the away locker rooms are very bad.
Oh yeah, the away locker rooms are pink. I'm sure it fucks with the players'
No
heads
air conditioning. I mean, come on. So I think, that was probably his worst one, but he's had a good year so far, so we're not gonna give him too much.
We have so many bets this week. We better.
Do we want to? Well, hang on. You know what? Let's break from that. Give them a little break from the bets. Let's preview these games real quick, and then we'll finish with the bets. So let's actually start with the game for tonight before we get too late. And I don't know. I just want to get this one out of the way. USC at Washington State. It's an interesting game. It seems like the money is kind of 50-50 on these teams. Pullman, Washington is a weird. Kind of like Iowa. It's a weird place to go and play. There's just something about playing up there that I think has gotten a few teams in trouble. USC is definitely the more talented team, and I think the line is still 4 or 4.5 or 5, I believe.
From what I've seen this week is early on, it was 4.
Right.
It was briefly at 3.5, I think, back up to 4 most of the week. And then today, it shot up to 6 at one point and then back down to 5.
Okay.
I think that's where it is right now.
I guess I'll let you start. Like, if you, I guess, want to talk about, like, if there's, like, any kind of mismatch as far as, like, the actual matchup between, like, certain units, or, like, how do you feel this game is going to go, essentially?
Well, this is one of the games I'm picking this week. I took USC -4. I thought that USC has been overvalued all season so far up to now, but I thought
you think like undervalued at this point in this game with that line?
Overvalued going into this week now it seems like it's shifted a ton. They're only -4, so I have a lot of faith in USC at that number. I mean, last week another road game at Cal, they were like -17, and then now they're going to Washington State only -4.
Yeah,
I don't think that Washington State and Cal are really that different. Steele would probably disagree with me.
Yeah, I think. I guess the way we look at it is USC really only a touchdown favorite on a neutral field against Washington State? I think it's more like 10. I think you're getting like a good 3 points of value there. So yeah, that's in my opinion. But you clearly think USC is going to win this game and cover. Then
I do.
Is there any specific reason why? Do you just think Washington State won't be able to slow them down enough, or what's the over/under at? Do you think it's gonna be a high-scoring game, or do you think it'll be actually a little stingier?
I think it's
like 60 something.
I think it's like 64.
Yeah,
64. Still like you're looking at like a 34-30 type game. I could see something like that.
Yeah, I was thinking more like. I was thinking maybe I don't know about the over/under. I mean, I could see like 38-30. I could see 35-24, something like that.
I could also see USC winning big in this game too.
Yeah. Like there's been a couple times in their recent history, I think, where they've blown them out, haven't they? Haven't we talked about that? I don't remember for sure, but interesting game. I think that it'll be good to see USC get another road test here and kind of see if Darnold maybe can keep the ball, in his teammates' hands and not turn it over like he did against Cal. That almost cost them in that game. But USC at the end, their athletes kind of just took over, and that's what they'll do against the Pac-12 offense.
I mean, that's how I kind of see this game. Just better athletes.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think USC actually covers in this game, and I actually think that they win this game kind of big. But let's move on to the primetime game for tomorrow night. It is, excuse me, guys, drinking this Coors Light here. It is Clemson at Virginia Tech. And interesting game. Clemson has looked really good in the bigger games they've played so far this year. They handled Auburn. They dominated Louisville at Louisville. And I think it doesn't look like there's a national championship hangover. This team looks hungry. They looked well coached again. I don't really have anything bad to say about Clemson. Virginia Tech, we don't really know a whole lot about Virginia Tech yet. Yeah, they won, a high energy game against West Virginia. We don't really know how good West Virginia is. But then Virginia Tech played East Carolina and Old Dominion. So it's kind of hard to judge them. I think that what we know about Virginia Tech this year is we still have questions, I think, about their quarterback and their offense. I think we're curious to see how Virginia Tech's, at least I am. I'm curious. I'm considering. I was considering picking Virginia Tech at 7.5, but I'm really worried about their offensive line and how they can handle Clemson. I think Clemson's going to make them one-dimensional, and that's not good. That plays really into Clemson's hands really well on defense. And then on the flip side of the ball, I'm a little worried that Clemson's going to have their way on the ground and really be able to control the pace of this game and do what they want. Now, where Virginia Tech has some athletes and might have a little bit of an edge is in the back seven. Their DBs and their linebackers are quite fast and athletic, and they're good. But I don't know how I see this game going. I wouldn't be that surprised if Clemson won by double digits. I don't think I'd be that shocked if Virginia Tech made this a really close game either. But maybe you're more in touch with how you think the game's going to go, or do you disagree with how I matched up their units, or what
with the +7 Virginia Tech +7? Which way would you go? Or +7.5 actually?
I would take the hook.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, it's a numbers thing. Like if I don't know, I'm just going to take the better number.
Yeah.
So
everyone was hyping up the
7. I take Clemson. I just take the better team.
Yeah.
I just think that they are probably. I mean, this is the way that I look at it, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I basically look at what the line is, and then I add the points or subtract them, whatever it is, for like home field. And in college, I think home field's worth more than what it is in the NFL often. So, like for example, Virginia Tech is a pretty decently tough place to play. I would say it's worth a little bit more than 3 points. I would say it's probably closer to 4 points, maybe.
Yeah, this is.
So I'm saying
tough place.
Yeah, so
going to be a lot tougher than going to Louisville. Like everyone was hyping that up as a huge test. This is going to be a much bigger test.
This is going to be bigger. This is a different atmosphere. This team plays well at home at night, usually in Blacksburg. I mean,
and a lot of stakes for Virginia Tech. Apparently, they've got like 100 recruits.
Corey
there.
from Denver's a Virginia Tech alum. He says there's over 100 recruits. Apparently, they all can't play for Virginia Tech, but they're all there, and some of them might be going to Clemson after this game, but
probably a lot of them.
Yeah, but some might be going to Virginia Tech if they can pull it off. I think the point I was trying to make is that Virginia Tech then, to me, on a neutral field, what we're saying Clemson's 10 to 11 points better on a neutral field, and that might be accurate, and it might be more like 2 touchdowns. I don't know for sure. This game's interesting to me. I think if Virginia Tech were to win this game and like look good doing it, not like fluke shit like Penn State, Ohio State last year. Although Penn State turned out to be a good team, I think we would have to start considering Virginia Tech for the playoff. I mean, they would probably get a rematch with Clemson because they're in different divisions. Miami might have something to say about that. NC State might have something to say about that. But this is a big game as far as I think ACC and national title implications.
Yeah, it's crazy you mentioned that. If Virginia Tech wins this game, then all of a sudden they actually, as crazy as it sounds,
they're probably ranked
as a playoff contender.
Like top, they're probably like 5th or 6th, maybe. Like,
yeah,
they're probably up
jump.
there.
They definitely jump Ohio State.
No question. Yeah, I mean, we have a loss. There's teams last week that TCU is in the top 10.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, this is Virginia. They play in the much weaker division, obviously. So this is by far their toughest crossover. They don't play Florida State or NC State, I believe. Yeah, they don't play them.
I was just thinking we should probably talk about TCU for a minute. like they're very quietly ranked like 6th, I think, in the country. I didn't look at their playoff. Kirk Herbstreit picked TCU to actually make the playoff before the year started. So if I can find the Big 12 here,
Yeah.
I'm actually curious to see where TCU is, where they go from here, essentially.
I can tell you. Oh, you got it. Yeah,
So who they got coming up? They got a bye.
Well, they got a bye now.
Yeah.
They're gonna host
West
West Virginia
That'd be interesting.
at Old Man Bill Snyder.
At Kansas State.
That's gonna be tricky.
Could be their stumbling block.
Then they got 2 jokes: Kansas and Iowa State.
Texas will be interesting, and then at Oklahoma. At Texas. I don't see them running this table. I actually think
they've got a shot.
There could be 2.
The big two. The big 2 are at Kansas State, at Oklahoma. I expect them to win the rest of the games, though.
Mm-hmm.
You never know; they could slip up in there somewhere.
Baylor will be interesting. Baylor always plays them really well the last few years. That's an interesting team. I think that Patterson always has them well coached. I mean, for all intents and purposes, they definitely shut down Oklahoma State. I mean, yeah, Oklahoma State helped hit the over. They scored a lot of points, but compared to what Oklahoma State usually does, TCU really held them in check. They harassed Mason Rudolph. Kenny Hill, he's the X factor for them. I think we can agree if he is good and doesn't turn the ball over, this is a dangerous team.
Yeah.
If he reverts back to some careless play, which I foresee happening for him again, he just hasn't proven it enough to me, then they're going to drop one that they maybe shouldn't, and it's going to cost them. But it is a team.
He's like a ticking time bomb. They could be like, undefeated late in the year, and you expect him to just fuck up at some point and just ruin their season.
It's definitely a team though that can win this conference and make the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure.
So I want to get them in real quick, show them some respect.
We can't forget that the Big 12 has a championship.
They do, and that's the thing is like everyone just assumed you would get Bedlam Part 2 this year, but you're forgetting about TCU. Texas has looked better recently. I mean,
I think that the Big 12 championship, there's a good chance that it ends up hurting the conference.
It
could. Because you're going to get a rematch, and if whoever lost the first game wins the second, they're probably going to take the Big 12 out of the playoff.
Right, completely. And then I mean, how do you decide? It was like Baylor TCU the year that Ohio State went.
Yeah.
They couldn't decide. If they would have came out and said, this is our champion, and maybe made more of a case for their conference and their team, a lot of people thought TCU should have been in that year. A lot of people thought Baylor should have been in over Ohio State. Ohio State, when they got into the playoff, proved that they would have beat the shit out of both those teams, but we'll never know. So I think you might be right about that. I guess we can move on to
this week's picks.
Yeah, let's get to our picks this week. I'll let you start. I'm going to go turn off my dehumidifier. It's kind of annoying me. I don't know if you guys can hear it. So I'll let you go ahead, though.
All right. Well, a big theme this week for sure is unders. I know I liked unders after I took a bunch of overs last week. Most of them let me down except for the UCLA-Stanford game. So I'll just get in mind. I've got Tennessee plus 7.5 against Georgia. I mean, this is a spot. I've got the hook. In this series, it's always a hotly contested game. It's usually not a blowout. Georgia, after rolling last week, everyone's going to be really high on them. It's at Tennessee. It's just in this series, I just expect it to be close. People aren't going to. I'm sure the public is all over Georgia after last week and the way they've been playing all season. So I thought that was a good play. I got Baylor again plus 17. This is the third week in a row that I'm taking Baylor. Ole Miss plus 28. I was just like, that's a lot of points for an SEC game. I mean, Bama might roll them, but still, I got 28 points at least. Then I've got 8 unders. I have no overs. I have 8 unders. We talk a lot about some teams are just auto unders right now.
Yeah. Vandy, Florida.
Yeah.
They play each other.
Vandy, Florida, playing each other. So that's an automatic under. Wisconsin, Northwestern. This game the last 3 years, I don't think the score has gone – the total score I don't think has gone into 30. So and it's at 50. So
It's
a lot of us,
that's that high.
yeah, a lot of us are taking the under in this one. Washington and Oregon State, I got the under there at 62. Army UTEP under 52. This one's dropped all the way down to 48.
In the Washington Oregon State game, is that just because you think Oregon State's not going to score like at all?
They might not. Okay. And Washington has not been putting up the kind of points they did last year.
No, they haven't. Yeah. They're interesting because they're kind of quietly doing kind of what TCU's doing right now. Like they're up there undefeated. But the thing with Washington is they play literally not a soul this year. Like they literally have the easy. They're like Wisconsin. Like they both could possibly be 12-0.
We thought by far their biggest game was Stanford, and that doesn't look nearly as big now.
Not as daunting, no. Stanford doesn't have the defense they did. I mean,
and their quarterbacks are terrible.
And their quarterbacks are bad, yeah.
Let's see. Navy, Tulsa, under 74. Both these teams, obviously. Tulsa, the last few years, very pass happy. This year, a lot more run heavy. Navy, you know what they're going to do every play.
Yeah.
Arizona State plus 16. That they are at Stanford this week. I think Arizona State is, improved over last year. I think
and Stanford's just not as good as we thought they would be.
Yeah, Stanford. I mean, they put up 58 last week, but that was against UCLA, and their defense is the worst.
Has the worst defense.
I mean, I know Arizona State's not good on D, but they're not that bad.
No, nobody's that.
No one's that bad.
Yeah,
that was it's pathetic.
Yeah.
Cuse, NC State under 65. Iowa, Michigan State. These are two teams, again, like we were saying, both kind of in the auto under category.
Power running team.
Yeah, so this, taking the under here, 45. USC -4, I mentioned that already. Texas Tech, Oklahoma State under 85.
That's a lot of points.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
This is one of the highest over-unders I can remember seeing in a while. I mean, I know last year, Texas Tech, there's no way I would ever take an under in a Texas Tech game.
Not ever.
This year, it looks like they're at least playing a little bit better defense.
Well, it opened, I think, at 80.5 or 81. So, I mean, you're getting the best number, probably. I mean, and I don't know, there might be noobs that bet it up to 86 or something, but I'm not betting it.
And it went through 84, which is kind of
right. You want to think of that's when you guys are going over unders. I mean, we're not saying we're pro bettors or anything, but people are like, oh, 42. Florida and Vandy have bad offenses. We'll just pick that. You should think about how many touchdowns are in the game. To be honest, I agree with you guys in the pod that if I had to bet, I probably would take the under Wisconsin Northwestern. It's fishy to me that it's as high as it is, and if it got down to 47.5, I think I would take the over just because of where that number's at, and it just feels weird to me. But the number's been at 49.
You might get a shot before kick.
I know. I might. I don't know. I when we get to my bets, I feel comfortable with the 5 that I made this week. So anyway, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, I got one more. Florida State -7 against Wake. I actually bought half a point here. I mean, it's just FSU.
That's how you got 7. It's at 8. I wanted to get that, but I saw it's at 8. Yeah, okay.
A little misleading.
No. Hey, look. Yeah. We haven't talked about how much we bet or the juice. We're just talking about we get what we get based on what we pay, so it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking FSU's athletes against Wake's athletes. I know Florida State's 0-2. I don't care. I think they're one of the 3 most talented teams in the country.
I actually forgot to mention too that I don't know what Blackman's stats were against NC State.
They were pretty good.
And that's the thing is, even if they weren't, I don't give a shit. I watched the game and he showed a lot of courage and grit, like Francois.
That's against a really good D line.
He took a lot of shots, and he put a couple balls on the money, staring down the barrel, getting hit right in his face.
And another thing, Florida State couldn't run the ball. It was all on him. And for his first start, to put up the numbers he did was pretty good.
Now, I tell you what, it'll be interesting for them. Let's say he crushes it to end this year. They could have an OSU problem, when OSU in 15 had JT and Cardale.
Yeah,
they could have that kind of issue. I think that's something that UFSU fans should hope that he looks good, but I would hope maybe not so good to where he's challenging Francois next year. Now, if he's a better player, then obviously you want him to, but I mean, Francois obviously has looked pretty good. I think if he gets better protection, he's looked really good. But anyway, sorry, I know I got off on a tangent.
I'm done. Do you want to go to yours?
Yeah. I don't remember what I had, so let's see what we got here. I booked Penn State minus 17 last Sunday against Indiana. I believe that line's moved to 18 or 18 and a half.
It's gone up.
I think that I felt more confident in it then than I do now, but I still feel confident in Penn State. The reason is that it's just matchup based for me. I saw an OSU offense that was still struggling with their pass offense at this point in the year. Well, at this point in the program, week 1 against Indiana, right? But we all remember, what did Dobbins do to that team?
Yeah.
And we still covered in that game.
Dobbins could have gone for like 300 if we gave him the ball enough.
And we still covered in that game, and we played terribly on defense against what Indiana does. Penn State, it's going to be similar, I think, if not worse.
We should mention Barkley, our Heisman guy in the preseason. He had a Heisman game last week.
Yeah.
He had over 200 yards rushing, about 90 yards receiving. He was pretty much a lot of their offense.
You want a bold prediction right now? I'm saying he's going to go for 200 plus in this game because I don't think Indiana can stop and run. And the thing that sucks for them is they're going to start bringing those safeties up, and Penn State's going to lob it over top of them. So I think Penn State there's potential for them to run away with this one. Indiana is solid for being a lower tier Big Ten team. They have some decent players that are going to play in the NFL. But I think I see Penn State winning this game by about 3 touchdowns. So that's my first bet. I have Oklahoma State minus 9 at Texas Tech. I believe that line's now to 11 or 12. I think that Oklahoma State's a little undervalued this week after putting up such a bad performance against TCU. I still think Oklahoma State has a lot of talent. Texas Tech is not going to stop them. The over-under's at 85.
Tech is coming off kind of a big win. So
yeah, and I think they might be overvalued. So right, I'm taking Oklahoma State on the upswing, I think, and I'm going to take Texas Tech kind of back on the downswing, I hope. So I do think Oklahoma State wins this game by, I think they win it by at least 14 points. I also have Vandy, Florida under. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this one. Florida's starting Jack Del Rio's son at quarterback.
Oh, Jesus. It's going to be even worse.
He's their 3rd quarterback for the year. The first 2 quarterbacks haven't done shit. Vandy it doesn't seem like they ever scored more than 3 touchdowns unless they get defensive or special teams touchdowns. So I expect this game to be more around 35 and not even close to 42.
Might be 17-14 at best.
It could honestly be
9 to 6.
Right. I was literally thinking 9 field goals. Yeah.
Neither of these teams can throw the football.
Yeah. If this goes over, I almost feel like I'm not gonna say it's guaranteed because of this, but I almost feel like it'd be unlucky, kickoff return for a touchdown, pick 6 or something. It's gonna be something like that. And that's not out of the realm of possibility with these quarterbacks that are playing in this game. But I have a little bit of a double dipper in the UNC Georgia Tech game. I have first we'll go with Georgia Tech minus 9.5. I think that's still where the line's at. This one is purely based on the fact that I don't think UNC can stop their triple option attack. UNC struggled with offenses that are more traditional to start the year. I think they're going to struggle even more when it comes to having to be disciplined and play assignment football against a triple option team. I think that Georgia Tech is actually pretty darn solid. So I think that this one might be closer, but I do think Georgia Tech covers this game. I'm also going over 60 points. Georgia Tech doesn't really have that great of a defense. UNC's got injuries. I already said their defense is kind of weak. I see this being more of a 38-28 type of game. So that one might be kind of close for me, but I felt good about those. I like the trends that I saw. My last pick, to agree with Addison, I got Tennessee at +8. I think that Georgia's definitely the better team. And the thing about Tennessee is they're not getting blown out in games; they're just blowing them. Butch Jones is terrible with clock management and decisions at the ends of games, beginning of games, pre-game, post-game.
The way I expect this game to play out is Tennessee is winning late. Georgia scores with 30 seconds left and wins.
And then everybody in Vol Nation complains about Butch Jones, which I'm with you guys. He's awful. You deserve better. So I think Tennessee in that one's going to be really solid. And looks like Miami and Duke are trying to recover a fumble, but they can't figure out how to do it.
Miami guy pointed the wrong way.
If we want to mention some of Corey and Steele's bets real quick.
Yeah, Steele probably didn't put too many in.
Yeah, we can go ahead and just throw out like a couple that look interesting. Corey wanted me to mention on the pod, I think, that he feels quite confident about his Hokies. He thinks that Virginia Tech is going to cover in this game. I don't think that he actually thinks they're going to win the game, but I think he's much more confident than we are about it. And that's going to happen when it's your school and you kind of have that nostalgic feeling about them. And I literally in my life have thought Ohio State was going to lose like 3 games in my life, and I'm sure that I could go back and look at it more with like my head and be like, okay, maybe I thought we should have lost like 8 to 10 games or something, but that even seems like a lot for us. But the point is, he thinks they're going to be competitive in that game. What are some of his other bets?
We're talking Corey.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
It
doesn't matter.
Well, we'll continue with Corey.
But yeah.
He's got Nebraska minus 6.5. That looks like a good play right now. Illinois is pretty terrible.
Yeah.
It was 21-3 at the half, so I don't know what the score is currently, but that looks like it's on track.
Yeah. Did the IT department here.
Corey loves the MAC, and he's got UMass plus 8.5 against Ohio, Buffalo minus 7 against Kent State.
Is UMass in the MAC?
They used to be. They're not anymore.
Oh, okay. Anyway.
Briefly.
Yeah.
Baylor plus 17. Him and I, we've been on Baylor like the last 3 weeks. They've been covering, so we're just riding with them.
Score update: Nebraska is up 28-6 to start the fourth quarter.
All right,
so it's looking good.
It's like a good bet.
Yeah.
Memphis plus 4 against UCF. Memphis is always a dangerous team. They can score a lot of points.
Yeah.
That should be a fun game.
I think when I was looking at that one, I think I would have bet the over, but I don't.
Yeah.
I didn't really think about it.
I don't know what it is.
Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
He agrees with you on Oklahoma State. He's taken them minus 9. We mentioned Virginia Tech. He's got them plus 7.5. Houston at Temple under 46. Now we watched Temple play last week against South Florida.
Temple's so bad.
This is a bad football team.
Yeah, and it's surprising because maybe it is because Matt Rule's gone, but like
he must
bad.
be the greatest coach. Yeah, they just looked.
To get that physically owned by a Charlie Strong football team, come on, man. Temple's bad football team.
So
if Temple played Illinois, they should both just forfeit. Like they both should just say we're not going to play for the sake of everybody's.
But I would want to watch that. So.
Well, you like college football no matter what.
So Temple, they're always a threat to get shut out. So I like that. I like that play.
Yeah.
Corey's also got the Oklahoma State, Texas Tech under 83. Like we said, that's a pretty big number.
That's a lot of points, man.
Yeah. Iowa Sparty under. We mentioned that. Corey loves his Big Ten and SEC unders for sure right now. So he's got Maryland and Minnesota under 44. Now, Maryland, like we said, they're on their third-string quarterback now. It looked like it changed their offense a lot. They look pretty inept. So that's probably a good play, good safe bet there. He's also got Northwestern, Wisconsin under, Cuse, NC State under, Mississippi State, Auburn under 50.5, and he did take the Memphis UCF over, and it's, it's 69. Yeah. So yeah, these are teams that are going to put up a lot of points. Mm-hmm. Moving on to Steele, he has the first win of the week. He took Texas minus 4.5 last night.
We're about to be 3-0 because that Nebraska game.
He also has Nebraska minus 6. He's subscribing to the Pac-12 plays no defense theory, I guess. So he's taken the over in USC Wazoo at 63, over 68 in the Cal-Oregon game. Okay. He's taken his Notre Dame boys minus 21 against Maction, Miami, Ohio. Gotta watch out for the Mactions, so you never know.
I've seen pros on Miami at like 23. That's why I went back to 21. But here's the thing: if you go by how I do betting again, Notre Dame, are they really only 18 points better than Miami on a neutral field? They really should be blowing Miami out. But Miami this year was supposed to be considered one of the better MAC teams. So yeah, and it could be a possible letdown spot where Notre Dame just had a huge emotional victory against Sparty. they have to go to UNC next weekend, which we don't think much of UNC, but that's not like the easiest game for Notre Dame. It's not like
Notre Dame's used to playing Power 5 teams, so
Right.
when they play a MAC team like this, I don't know. You never know how they're going to
I
respond.
just think it's a no bet. Like
Yeah.
it just seems like I don't know. I think it's just one of those things again where he's just going with his team, and I tried to really avoid betting Ohio State just for that reason. Like I just feel like I just can't be unbiased enough, even though I feel like I am on the pod, but I'm sitting here thinking like Ohio State's minus 29 against Rutgers, and I'm like, we're gonna beat them like 51-6. But
if you think you're not gonna have like a unbiased opinion, then just don't.
No, just keep going.
Yeah,
I'm out.
So Syracuse plus 14 against NC State. I don't know. What do you think about that?
He has Syracuse plus 14
plus 14
against NC State.
Yeah, maybe he's definitely going against what the public is going to be going.
Is it at NC State?
I think so.
Wow, that seems lower than what I thought it would be. Is Syracuse any good at all?
I would think not.
That's weird. I wonder if that's like a piggyback if he like got that off a pro or something, because that's like a really random game, and that line seems weird to me. Like it almost seems like a line good enough to take NC State. But I don't know. It's weird. Okay. Anyway,
they are off a big win, so
that's true.
It's a spot where you kind of are thinking like you want to go the other way. And his last two are a couple that seem to be pretty unanimous for the most part for us this week. He's got under in the Vandy, Florida game and under in the Northwestern, Wisconsin game.
Okay.
So we've got a lot of picks out there for you this week. So think about what you want to do. If you've got any picks or your thoughts on games this week, make sure to comment. Let us know what you think.
And I mean, if we start getting enough views, which we used to get on my poker channel, but that's where the podcast used to be, and we used to get more views, and we're trying to build up this separate channel to kind of give respect to the college football podcast and such. And we will have videos up and start getting more views. But yeah, did you see that? But I think you guys, if you see this video, you might have already missed the action in the games this weekend. But I think the important thing with this video is we try to entertain, and if you look back and see how we think about the games and how we analyze them, and that's how we make our picks, that might help you guys if you're looking to make a few extra bucks or something. And I think Addison would agree with that. I mean, you just kind of look at trends, you look at games that the teams played the week before, make sure you pay attention to injury reports. Weather is one that I think is very undervalued. Last year, Addison and Steele and I basically bet our bankrolls, which I would never tell you guys to do, but there was a live over-under in the NC State Notre Dame game where there was a hurricane. If you guys remember that last year, there was 1 week in the year where there was a hurricane that affected all the coastal games, and we bet our bankrolls on. I mean, we literally covered those games, those lines by like 30 points, like a gimme cover. Like it was like the Mayweather fight, like literally like handing you money basically. So I think that if you guys pay attention to the trends, that kind of stuff, if you
certain matchups, tend to be closer. I'd say, we've mentioned the Georgia-Tennessee game. That's interdivision game. That's usually going to be a dogfight. So those kind of things. Sometimes there's coaching edges in certain games.
Yeah, pay attention to that stuff, and I think it'll help you guys make some money. But do you have anything to wrap it up on, or is that going to be it for this week?
I don't have anything else except
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks as usual. I mean,
smash Rutgers.
Yeah.
We're going to be back too. You guys are
Ohio State minus 30, I think, right
now.
I
will say this. Anybody that's off the wagon, and especially like OSU fans, you guys, that you need to understand that Kevin Wilson was really hyped up to come in this year, and we played a really good Oklahoma program in week 2, and we look bad. And honestly, we're not going to know what kind of improvement has really happened until we play Penn State. Now, did we look good last week? I think Addison can agree that, yeah, we played UNLV, but you still have to give some credit where credit's due. I thought the receivers looked a lot more confident in their routes. I thought the game was called in a manner that it looks like Wilson's really starting to understand what he has with his personnel.
I think, he's got to get comfortable with guys. I think Urban's letting him do a little more now.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is JT Barrett looked every single play like he knew exactly what he wanted to do. The ball was out quickly. I think that for that team to beat elite teams, yes, we do need to be able to at least threaten teams down the field. But here's the thing: if the running game is really successful, then what ends up happening is you get safeties that creep up, you get linebackers that aren't disciplined, and maybe they aren't. They're taught to read and react. Basically, if you guys have football or know what they're supposed to do, but they read certain linemen and certain keys to whether it's going to be run or pass. And when you're just hammering them with the run with J.K. Dobbins, when Weber gets healthy, which I don't know why he's still suiting up, it doesn't make any sense. But if a team like OSU can make you creep up and make you start to forget about assignment football, all of a sudden a crossing route where a safety or linebacker is out of position goes 80 yards, which Paris Campbell's proven he can do, Johnny Dixon, these guys have proven they can do. So the deep ball might not be as important as if you can be efficient in the intermediate games. So that's just something that I think keep in mind. Obviously, I know you guys are going to say, you know what, fuck you guys, you're biased, you're Ohio State fans, you're going to say shit like this.
Remember 2 years ago.
I'm just trying to be a reasonable, college football fan and football armchair basement analyst here. If you guys are off the wagon, I'm not going to say I told you so when Ohio State stomps Penn State, but I'm just going to say that's a team that I think people shouldn't forget about. You shouldn't forget about a team that talented and just write them off like you are, because those kinds of teams it's not like if Oklahoma State lost early. They don't have the players we have. So, you can be more confident that, you know what, Oklahoma State didn't look good in that game. I still think they're talented enough to win. But it's much more likely Ohio State wins their games than Oklahoma State does.
Yeah.
So,
like you said about JT, I definitely think, I really think, even though these are bad teams we've played, I think he's looked more confident. We've tried to actually call plays more to actually suit him instead of trying to do things.
Well, if you've noticed, they've given him a lot of RPOs.
Yeah.
And they've given him a lot of situations where he's supposed to make a decision.
Yeah,
no matter what anybody says, I don't care who watches this, you can say what you want in the comment section. He's still one of the best decision makers in the history of our school and in college football. He does not make poor decisions ever. Now, when it comes to execution, or if he's too trusting or not trusting enough, yeah, those are things that have come into play, obviously against Oklahoma, against Clemson. But we've said it before, if you don't have time to throw and there's nobody open, then you're not going to have good stats, and people are going to crush you. And
we want him to be able to have pre-snap reads where he knows where he's going to go with the ball, whether it's whether it's going to be a zone read or it's going to be a quick throw. There's been a lot of quick throws to the outside of the receivers, which are kind of an extension of the run game. We've really just been working on the passing game. I mean, Dobbins could have run for whatever he wanted the last couple weeks.
I like what Wilson implemented. I don't know if you have seen this specifically, but last week what they did, and I kind of thought I saw this, and then I saw 11 Warriors post something on Twitter about this. They're giving him kind of option routes now where he can just make an easy decision. So what they did on the left side of the field, for example, slot receiver runs a slant, and JT reads it like an option play. If the outside linebacker or the safety, whoever's the key, if he goes with the slant, he throws the hitch to the flanker or the split end, whoever's out there. If the guy stays, then he throws the slant. It's a simple process, and it's just about reading that key like an option play, which JT is an elite decision maker when it comes to zone read and making option plays. So I think Wilson just looked at the running game and he's like, how can I implement that maybe more into the passing game and use this kid smart, as opposed to we need to let's get him in 5-step drops and have him doing NFL progressions and throws. He's not that player. He's just not. Haskins, maybe he will be, but I think for now it's clear that Urban and how Kevin Wilson's been quoted several times saying that JT is one of the best players he's ever coached against and with. And this guy, Wilson, he coached Sam Bradford, who was a Heisman Trophy winner. So, and Bradford's in the NFL. He's made of glass, but when he plays, he's actually pretty productive. So, I'm not saying that JT is as good as Sam Bradford and shit like that. But what I'm saying is I don't think Wilson – some people might say, oh, he's just saying that because he's a coach. He was saying that at Indiana when he was coaching against him. And coaches don't just bullshit like that. So I mean, some do, but I think he's genuine with that. And I think it's clear the direction they're going. They're not sitting JT. He's looked better and better the last couple of weeks, but I will agree, and I think you'll agree with this. No matter if he dices Rutgers, Maryland, and Nebraska, we want to see it against a team with comparable roster talent. Penn State,
Yeah,
we
because
need to see it against them.
We don't. I mean, we win the games we should win, but when it's these big games. We got to win the big games, of course.
Yeah, and
that's what we expect.
If we can't throw the ball, if we look the same or even close to the same as we did against Oklahoma, then I think we're just going to have to be like, you know what, it's time to move on and prepare for the future of this program and probably put Haskins in.
Yeah, if we lose another game, then
I mean, if it's that ineffective on offense, you got to probably put Haskins in and let him get some chemistry with these receivers and get him live game reps, because we're not going to go into next year. Every single year programs like Ohio State are thinking national title. You think Big Ten title, national title. That's what you think. And so, I mean, JT's great, but if they lose to Penn State, the playoff hunt is over. And I think if Urban was smart, I probably would put Haskins in. I know JT's done a lot for this program, but at that point, you have to do what's best for the program, and JT would understand that. So, yeah, we went a little bit of an OSU tangent, but we're fans, and we actually been pretty good this year about not doing that with them. I don't remember.
Yeah, but we like to talk about Ohio State. I know people hate
hear
about Ohio State.
Well,
so.
like a sarcastic manner, they like to hear about them. So yeah, but this USC, are they wearing or Washington State wearing all gray?
Yeah,
that's weird.
So the USC game just started.
Yeah, so that just started. We're gonna get to that, and I'm gonna end this podcast. So yeah, good luck with your bets if you make them. Feel free to leave comments like Addison said, and we will see you guys in the next pod. Bye.